What is up, everyone, and welcome back to your favorite podcast. Stay tuned for deep dives. My name is Carter. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm here with my incredible co-host, Tori. And last week, we got to dive into the story elements of a Nancy Drew game, and that was part one, as we covered the classic and golden era games. And this episode is part two of that.
Woo.
Yeah, and it's super exciting, Tori, because this is where we really start to get into like very nitty-gritty story stuff, that things start changing, things start getting really wild.
So wild. I cannot wait for this conversation.
Me too.
I'm just like, yes, I'm so ready to bring things that we have talked about, like just as friends, like
I know.
onto the podcast, and let's just flesh it out.
I know, because like how many times have I DM'd you and I'm like in all caps, Tori, I got something to get off my chest, and I just start talking about Haunting of Castle Malloy and how it makes no sense, right?
Or another game, but we're not
ready for that episode yet.
We're not ready. We're not ready.
Best believe in season 2, you guys are going to be shooketh when that episode comes out. No, but really, it's
teasing. Yeah.
It's just the stories here are so much different than what we had just talked about last week. So that's why it's exciting that we're going to kind of like unfold and get into unpack this box of how it changed and where it's going now.
And I'm wondering, for the Spotify people, I was like, I don't know, do we need a counter in today's episode for how much Malloy slander is about to go down? I don't know. Also, everything we do today is done in the greatest of love.
Yes.
We're not here.
So glad you said that.
Yes, even things we're critical of today, we're not here just to sit and take shots.
And I really am glad you said that, because I want people to know that in my order of what eras that I love the most, golden obviously is number 1, but experimental is actually 2 for me.
You do love it.
I love these games, even though I just dog Haunting of and I also need to clarify that too. I love the Haunting of Castle Malloy as a game. I love to play
because
it.
We love.
Yes, but I still dog it because it's crazy, and I love it's crazy, but you know.
Yep.
But
I totally understand.
Let's take a moment and talk about just the games itself that are falling in the experimental era, and then we'll get to the personal era. But as far as the experimental era, what's so different between it and the golden era? And last week we kind of touched on the fact that classic and golden, they have very more like standard mysteries. It starts with classic, it's very a lot more standard classic mysteries, right, that are very true to Nancy Drew and storytelling and mysteries in general. And as we get to the golden era, it still stays pretty true to that. You have treasure hunt like all over the place, right? But it starts to implement a few more fantastical elements into it that make it a little bit more like campy Nancy Drew game, like this is what we love. But with the experimental era, it's somebody cranked that notch up a lot. They
were trying to make the batch, and they just dumped they just dumped the whole crazy powder. Yep.
Yeah, but I think you and I should go down the list of games that fall in the experimental era, and I think we should just start unpacking some of that like just craziness that's a part of the stories. And it all starts with Danger by Design. Tori, what even did you think when you first played? Because see, like Shadow Ranch was your first game, is that right?
Yes.
And you played I think you went backwards, right, to like game 6 or 5, and then you.
Yeah, I somehow kind of did this. I can't remember if I played the golden era in order, but yeah, I ended up I was just bouncing around the golden era for a long time.
I know that once I got to Danger by Design, I mean, I was still very, young, and that just first 15 seconds of the mystery.
I brought a potted plant with me today.
I mean, Nancy walks in and just, there's screaming, there's yelling. It's like, what a way to just meet somebody, right? Like what a to just be
Mhm.
introduced to Heather and Manette at the same time. It's
I
a
know.
lot going on, you know. But like what were you feeling as like just because it's very invasive when it starts off.
Honestly, the number one this isn't really a storytelling thing. To be honest, the number one thing I remember about Danger by Design is being completely traumatized by Manette's tea puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
Which I mean, I guess I this bizarre woman who's so completely over the top. Like, okay, there was Linda Penvillin. Yeah, she was acting definitely weird because
Sure.
she thought she was under a curse. But then Manette came along, which is like, you want to be weird? I was like, I'll show you weird. It's like this woman and her tea. I cannot figure her out. Cannot figure her tea out. This creepy mask. Like, yeah, no, I just remember thinking that game was so everything about it just felt so completely wild to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm swimming through the sewers.
Right?
I'm sneaking into the catacombs. Like, um, I'm talking to, this guy who's like stalking my housemate and getting information from him. Like, it was just so. And then, okay, the ending, like Ichido. Yes, this game from beginning to end was just an absolute trip, and like the whole like stained glass being hid underneath the city of Paris. I was just like, what is happening?
I mean, like
It's so wild.
fantastical, and it's just a
It is
thousand
truly
times
fantastical.
fantastical than what the Golden did. I mean, it's just, I mean, it takes Treasure Hunt to a whole nother level.
It
Whole
does.
nother
It
level.
really does.
And then it continues, and then we get to Creature of Kapu Cave.
mutant, mutant plants, bug
What?
doo doo.
I still don't even feel like I know that I even know. I get to the end of that game and I'm like, wait a minute. What, where does this, how did this
Yeah.
happen? Like
Yes.
there's some connections I feel like I missed there.
You speak the truest truth. I
Johnny
still
Johnny
wonder.
Kudu Kodo newspaper pineapple bugs. There's a temple. I don't know under the volcano. I'm just you know what I'm saying. And like this is we are hopping over boiling lava in a volcano at the end of this puzzle to escape the inside of the temple volcano. This is how fantastical we have gone from
It's just
just
the most.
I'm visiting a museum. I'm going to a friend's house. I'm going to a manor to investigate something. To I'm in the inside of a temple volcano. Jumanji. It's
How about
just
Icicle Creek?
I actually okay. So when that game came
Hawaii
out,
wasn't enough.
I know, and when that game first came out, I was genuinely confused with the first like hour and a half, 2 hours of playing that game.
Oh no.
Because no, yeah, I was because I was like, wait, I really don't understand. Like, why do people really believe? Like everybody here believes and blames
A wolf?
a wolf for throwing a snowball at a window and breaking the glass and for
And
icing the
blowing up a
stairs.
bunkhouse?
And I was like, wait, we're really made to believe this is the case?
Then it turns out that wolf is almost a house pet.
Yeah, that you can say
Follows
jump,
directions really well.
left, right.
Forward, right, yeah, paw, Isis, go.
Yeah, it's
I
just
just want to say for the record, I'm having the best time right now. Like this era truly is. I'm so glad it exists, even
it.
though it's crazy. Oh, also, by the way, radioactive needle, all the green
Oh
light. I'm like,
yes,
I'm sorry, how much radiation am I taking in right now? So like, Nancy, can you please let us know, like, um,
yes,
if you turned out okay? Like, we hope you don't have cancer because I don't know
yes.
what was happening. I don't know what was happening in that needle.
And then we just get to go to the good old city of New Orleans. And we're going to do another treasure quest. But this one is an interesting treasure quest because it's got like Louisiana magical power crystal skull.
Yeah, they really pulled in that culture more,
They did.
and so it feels way different.
It really
Yeah,
does.
this potentially magical skull.
Down on the
I
bayou.
never had to find a treasure like that before. Plus, Bruno Bollet was, all of his
His cookie house.
eccentricities, and there are potentially wild animals besides Iggy the iguana running around this house. Like, I don't know. What's that green drink Renee's trying to get me to have? I don't know.
Yeah, no, and all the powders that make you sneeze, cry, and yes, it was very much, you're right, more of that culture for sure. And I know
Yeah.
this is one of your favorite games. It's also one of my favorite games, but it definitely goes hands down in my opinion. It has to go in like the top like craziest, wildest Nancy Drew games. It's the Phantom of Venice. For all the things.
Whatever for? There's nothing wild about that game.
Maybe for me, it's the pigeon. It's the feeding of the tracking
Maybe.
device that can blow up in the
Maybe.
pigeon.
That is a bit weird. Maybe it's Punchy LaRue
Maybe that.
dancing in a nightclub. Maybe.
It could be that.
Yes. So true. Although I will say, and I made a note of this, like, take those individually wacky elements away. I actually do think Phantom of Venice has a very kind of straightforward, like, it's an art heist.
Yeah.
So I think as an overall story, it's maybe one of the most normal of the bunch. But yes,
Yes.
between the Carnivale outfits and the dancing and the pigeon that's not going to explode, yeah, it's a wild one.
It's actually ironic that you mentioned that because really, when I look at this whole era, there's three games that I always like feel like I gravitate more towards out of this whole era, and it's
Oh,
no, and you're gonna be like, of course, when I say it's Legend of the Crystal Skull, it's Phantom of Venice, and Warnings at Waverly Academy, and those three tend to be the ones that I always seem to gravitate more towards, which make more sense because those seem to be the stories that are more leaning towards Nancy comes to a place, she's going to
yeah.
investigate and unravel this mystery.
Yes.
It
I'm so glad you brought it up because I literally have been thinking the exact same thing since we started this podcast. Like, I realized, I'm like, wait. I was like, I think there's reasons why I love Phantom of Venice. I think there's
yes.
reasons why Warnings at Waverly Academy is so popular. Yeah, and also Legend of the Crystal Skull. There's a lot of people who enjoy it. I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, they do feel more standard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not so much like that I have to swallow all at once to
Yeah.
suspend my disbelief. Can I also say,
Yes.
this is jumping out of order. This is why I always like feel bad when I play Trail of the Twister. I feel like Trail of the Twister had the same potential to be
Yes.
just as fantastic
You're
as those
so
three
right.
games. But then I always think, like, no, literally this is the game with too many chores. Every
Mm-hmm.
time I feel like I try to advance in the story, Debbie or Scott or Pa or Chase or Frosty,
Literally everybody.
they're saying, go do this.
mm.
So I was thinking a lot about that. I was like, that's a classic sabotage game.
hmm
Should have been great. But they got the pacing wrong. Too many chores.
Just so you know, as far because you were talking about just the games that I feel like feel more like they're more classic, and maybe that's why we like them more. Even though that they have these other games that are like more on the wild side, I still love them. I still
Yeah.
love them. I still have a
Yeah.
great appreciation for them. And so when everybody hears us talk about this next game, I just want you to know that I'm not dogging it because I hate it. I'm dogging it because I love it. It's the haunting of Castle Malloy. Um,
We
and
slander because we love.
that's right. And I didn't really know how to take this Nancy Drew game just from the front when I first started playing it because I was like, oh, we are going to just openly accept that there is a running around banshee. I thought it was in my mind when I was first playing it. I was like, oh, this is going to be like a Scooby Doo moment. Like it was a woman in a mask or something, like doing something, which would have been kind of, I guess, weird for a Nancy Drew game because that's not really something that I guess typically happens, although it has happened in a Nancy Drew game before. But Yeah, when it got to the end and I was like, there's a rocket, the ground literally opened up like like grass and flowers literally did this and opened up
Yes.
and a
Yes.
rocket shot out of the depths of the earth
Yeah.
and
And
everybody watched the rocket go to the sky.
yeah. And it turns out the Banshee was just a little girl who didn't die in an explosion, which is good news. But then she ended up in a bog raised by a hermit and clearly didn't turn out too well. Like,
And
okay. And then also the
a
jetpack.
jetpack.
Can I also? I feel like this is a great time to put in because I just replayed Haunting of Castle Malloy a few days ago.
Ooh.
And I do want to say for the record, I do feel like I enjoy that game more every time I play it. I feel like I'm just like at a time in my life, like, you know what? I am ready to embrace the crazy. Like, yes, give it to me. But also I was just cracking up, and I could tell it's like they were poking fun at themselves all, for their plot line. There was some sort of phone conversation. I called Ned, and Ned, he was just trying to be funny. He made some comment to Nancy about like I can't remember if he was talking about Matt or something. He's like maybe he knows how to fly. And Ned was just being funny, and Nancy was very like, "Ha ha, very funny, Ned." Turns out Ned, you knew more than you realized. Like we do fly. We do fly in this game. We could have made it to Neverland with that jetpack.
That's awesome. I don't think I've ever had that conversation before with him in that game.
Anyway, that just cracked me up. I was like, "Oh, they are so being so cheeky right now. They're so proud of themselves for what is about to happen."
I love it.
And then Ransom of the Seven Ships. What do you think about this one?
Oh
Wow.
man, I feel like it had really cool potential, like as far as like a storyline goes, you know, that a returning culprit would lure Nancy out, kidnap Bess. Like I think those are all cool elements. I think where it failed was that it only had one suspect. And if it that's just where it failed. Like would have been a
One
way
suspect
cooler
and
game.
super annoying monkeys.
Yeah, but you know what? I just really feel like had they had maybe like two more people on the island, maybe someone at the resort, maybe someone else out there in the jungle
Yeah.
area, that
Yeah.
would they would have been that would have been fine if they just would have done that.
Yep. I so agree. For all of its flaws or whatever. Like I think we both I'm definitely getting the sense from you, and I'd say I feel the same way. Like, you know, we love the wackiness. We just take it as it is. Like, um and I just wanted to make sure, like, because I know we have people listening. I remember from our experimental era episode, we actually did,
Yes.
going right along with what we said. We had said in that episode that this era is polarizing. Seems like people either really love the stories or they just cannot stand them. And our
Yes.
comment section proved the point.
Yep, sure did.
Because I remember very specifically, we got basically some polar opposite comments from people
Yes.
saying, "Yeah, I these stories they were just so strange to me, could not get into them at all." But then someone else who said, "I love how wild these are. Like I love it makes me feel like anything's possible. Like Nancy can strap on a jetpack, or go hang out with a wolf, get pummeled by monkeys. Like, it's they really appreciated how fantastical this era is. So, like, where if whoever's listening, wherever you land on this era, like that's okay. I think this is like kind of more now I think we are going to bring up some things like there's some genuine issues with how these games are written that sometimes makes it hard to have that very I feel very satisfied when you get to the end of the mystery, but it is okay. Like if you don't love the inherent craziness of this era, that's fine.
It is so
And if you
fine.
do and if you do love it, that's also fine.
Onions. Everybody's
Yes.
got one.
Yep.
They all have
Yeah. 'Cause
layers. Onions have
yeah.
layers.
Yeah. I do remember. I actually think this has been quite a journey. Like I love hearing you talk about how much you love this era, and like
Hmm.
you dog it because you love it. Because I definitely feel like the more I play the Nancy Drew games, like I don't know, there is just something about like, you know what? Yes, they were not afraid to just do the most insane thing, and
And
honestly, I respect them for that. And
can
I
I
so I find
say,
myself like enjoying these games a lot more than I used to.
yes, and can I say, I think what sets apart the experimental and personal era for me is that the experimental is fun and happy, even though it's wild, but the personal is really sad, even though it's wild. You see? And so, like, I am met with a lot of like dark, sad, wild story, but this one at least can be campy and wild. And I think maybe that's why I pour more into the experimental era because I'm like, well, even though it's so sad that Fiona survived alone and whatever, whatever. This jetpack nonsense is absolutely hilarious to me that Nancy's literally just flying around and she's going, wee! Like, that's funny to me.
The joy in her voice. Like,
I
yes.
just think that that's really funny. That's what I think this is what makes it a likable era for me. Even though, as a mystery goes, maybe it's not the best, I can still really enjoy its
It's because
campiness.
the vibes.
It's
You're
the
very much
vibes.
here's what I've learned about you. You are a man who like the vibes must be right. You're willing to
Yes.
forgive a lot of things if the vibes are correct.
That's right.
That's what I feel like
Because,
longer I've been friends with you, I feel like that has really sunk home.
yes, because okay, even though Haunting of Castle Malloy story wise is like, what's going on? It's really fun that I got to buy a pan flute from an arcade game in a pub where I played Difference Detective, and I'm like, do 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 do, and the sheep come up, and I make it look like Elvis. That's
Yeah.
just fun, even though it
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Yes. Yeah. It's
So,
true.
but
It's
yeah,
true.
no. So last week we also talked about how kind of one of the ways that the Nancy Drew games really like to really focus on, I think we kind of associated it with pattern two. We had noticed there was two different patterns, is that they like to interweave like past and present into a mystery. And
Mhm.
it was really strong in a lot of like the classic golden era. And then we get here and they start kind of like, well, what's the best word? Experimenting, I guess. Because they really start changing it up. And I feel like maybe we could just briefly kind of like mention that. You know, we
Sure.
have some of the past figures like Noisette Tornade and Danger by Design, or Trapper Dan and Julius McQuaid and the White Wolf of Estill Creek, right? The Malloy family, El Toro. Like we have all these people, Rita Hollowell, all these people, right? We start learning about. But there's also some games where it's like that pattern just flew out the window and they didn't use that pattern at all. Like the Creature of Kapu Cave. Do you know? I don't know. Was it
Yeah.
Kaneo Kala?
I don't know. Does Kaneo call him matter or not? I feel like he, after a little bit, like he becomes irrelevant, which is
Yeah,
weird to me.
right?
They made this big deal about this mythical figure, and then he just kind of
Like doesn't he just disappears. We don't really talk about
yeah
him a whole lot.
yeah weird.
Yeah. Right?
What
And
about
then
Crystal Skull?
yeah, so that one's really interesting one too because I remember playing that one and going throughout. It was really more about like the current happenings. Like it wasn't really
Yes,
anything about past it was really just about, Henry's uncle, Bruno Bolle,
yeah, who literally like just died.
just died a few days ago. That's what we're there to kind of just assess, and like that
Mhm.
that's all there is. We don't really dig into much of anything else other than just that situation. So that kind of mixed it up a little bit. We didn't have that happen too often, but that was something that they did kind of grab onto in this era for a few games. Uh Phantom of Venice, Trail of the Twister, those were all events that happened like present day. We weren't learning about some
Mhm.
past historical person. It was just present day, what's going on right now. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting. But I think you had some interesting notes just about the patterns, which was really fun to talk about last week, and I would love to hear more about what you have this week for that.
Yeah, so just to mention our patterns again. So just two patterns. So remember the first one is where like Nancy kind of whatever mystery she starts with, like that's what she's focused on the entire game. And then the pattern 2 was she kind of starts like with this one mystery and then she, somehow stumbles into or finds a second one and then she might kind of like turn her attention to that, but then like the game will show that the two were somehow connected. So it's interesting. We had noted last week, pattern 1 was in the first 2 classic era games, then it totally disappears. They were just all about that pattern 2, like let's blend our stories together again, and that goes also along with because they were very much about the past and present thing and weaving that together. But we see that pattern 1 makes a return. So Phantom of Venice, that game, the entire time is about Nancy trying to figure out who's this phantom, like who's he working with to steal all this art. And in my onion, Phantom of Venice also is the best of the bunch
I
with
agree.
like this pattern because I think it's so riveting to me. Like the deeper and deeper you get into that mystery, the more involved you find out, like, whoa, this is a huge crime ring. Like this is not just some random person cleverly breaking into places and stealing stuff. Like he's working for someone
Oh
who's
yeah.
got this very like very masterful setup. So I think it absolutely like does it fantastically, just showing kind of how complicated the whole thing is the further you get into the mystery. And then Ransom of the Seven Ships. The entire time it's about I kidnapped your friend Bess. If you want her back, bring me this treasure. That's the goal the entire time. Now, of course, they do catch you off guard at the very end with that big old plot twist because you find out, oh, wait, this isn't just some greedy person.
Ooh,
Like,
wait.
yes, like they hate
I love
me
that.
and they want to get revenge on me. So they did throw in that, for lack of a better term, monkey wrench into things right at the end. Yes, yes. I don't apologize for that.
You shouldn't.
I was like, it showed up in my head. I'm like, I'm just going for it. And then Trail of the Twister again. It's focused the whole way is about who's sabotaging the team, but again, it's that one is difficult. I feel like to follow just because I just think they got the pacing wrong with the puzzle. So then pattern 2, I think that the ones of pattern 2 that do particularly well. And Carter, you already mentioned this game. Actually, you mentioned both of these games as 2 of the 3 in this era that you gravitate to.
I didn't even mean
Legend of the
to.
Crystal Skull. Yeah, it's you must have good instincts or something.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, that does not surprise me. All right, so Legend of the Crystal Skull. And that's all the things aside about how like it definitely is a weirder vibe because they leaned into more of those like all the voodoo stuff and the crystal skull might have magic powers, like I don't know. So that changes the flavor of the mystery a little bit, but still ultimately it's about like she's just she's coming at first really just to kind of check in on Henry, find out if everything's okay. And then, of course, immediately she gets sprung upon by this skeleton man. So, our initial mystery is like, okay, who's the creepy person in the house? And why did they just like knock me out? What's going on with that? But then is again, Nancy kind of pretty quickly figures out like, oh, okay. Uncle Bruno owned this really special skull. Probably someone's trying to go after it. So she turns her
Yeah.
attention to finding the
So
skull,
good.
and then of course, yes, you do find out like that was the whole point. The culprit also knows about the skull and wants the skull. So that one to me is just very straightforward. Feels very like classic golden era in its setup. And then same thing with Warnings at Waverly Academy. You have all these girls who are getting threatened and having bad things happen to them. And that's why Nancy shows up. She's there to figure out like who the black cat is. But then as she goes in further, she finds out, oh, okay, Rita Hollowell, like she's got something hidden somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
A treasure of a different kind. Like we're not looking for gold or a diamond
Right.
or whatever, but certainly like a lost Edgar Allan Poe manuscript. Like that's a big deal. So it becomes about trying to track that down. And again, same deal. You find out that the culprit in that game knew that there was a lost manuscript somewhere and was using all the black cat stuff to try to like clear the building so that she would have time to find the manuscript.
Yeah.
And it's also just interesting to me. I don't know if this means anything. Like both of those happen to be treasure stories.
I
Like
feel like that's important.
I just like, is that a coinky dink? I don't know. Or is it maybe just there's just something inherent to that kind of story? It just really
I think
works.
so. I feel like when we have a treasure quest mystery, I think what makes it so fun is that means that when you're uncovering clues, it feels a bit more like purposeful because those clues were left behind to find the treasure.
Oh yeah.
You know, so maybe those just make more sense than when things are just kind of like random. Like, would someone have left a random puzzle here for this? Probably not. But if it was for a treasure, yes, they would. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
maybe.
Oh, I never really thought about that. Oh, I like that.
But I think you also make a good point here because you also mentioned that even though those were the ones that were good, they were the ones that were not so good at implementing this pattern. And we want to talk about those too. And you have it listed as Danger by Design, Creature of Kapu Cave, The White Wolf of Icicle Creek, and The Haunting of Castle Malloy. And surprise, surprise, these are also the ones that I'm like, I always felt a twinge of like, but there was something there that I just was like, I feel like this is why. This is why. It's really that I think the other ones are better at being very clear about what we're doing, whereas somehow with these four, there's just this bit of like something's not as clear. And why don't we start with Danger by Design? Just kind of what's not clear.
Yeah. So really, this comes down to I just don't think these games knew quite how to weave all the details together and get to the end. And they kind of like they attempted to follow the pattern. Like, okay, here's your starting mystery. Here's another one. And then you kind of just get to the end and you're like, wait, like I don't know what just happened. So Danger by Design, again, it starts straightforwardly enough. Nancy goes to figure out why is Minette acting crazy.
Why is she throwing potted plants?
And who's leaving cockroaches and whatever else in her office. And then Nancy gets very sidetracked with this whole like Noisette Tornade World War II storyline. Then you get to the end of that game and it turns out like they just had absolutely nothing to do with each other. And I feel like the game like gives me whiplash at the very end because
not whiplash. I wasn't expecting that. Just imagine you get into the end, you're like, what?
Well, no, but I don't know how else to describe it because we finally like get into the Mulan, like the hidden part underneath, and it's like, oh, like here's all the artwork, you know, and figured out what Noisette Tornade was hiding. And then Nancy's going back upstairs, and then suddenly the game, spoiler alert, like the game realizes like, oh wait, yeah, we gotta have a culprit. So like, okay, switch. Like it's Minette. Like she's having a conversation about this, you know, dress, and like, I'm just like, wait, like the what's happening? Like I just found the artwork, and now you're wanting me to like karate chop Minette. Like what's going on? So it just. and we can get into this when we get to like the breadcrumb laying part. Like talk maybe more about some of those details. But it's just like
Sure.
I don't know. It just leaves me a little bit like, oh, whoa. Like you're turning my attention away too much. And then Creature of Kapu Cave.
Oh, that one's so confusing.
I feel like this game is just all over the place. So
Yeah.
the initial mystery I would say is Nancy shows up and someone has trashed the camp. And now I want to sing that Tarzan song about trashing the camp. And again, okay, send me to the hospital. I got more whiplash from this game and what's going on. Because, okay, then suddenly it's like, oh, Kanayakala. Oh, no, the pineapple crops are having a problem. Ooh, the Mapus might be hiding something. Ooh, like, what? The teeth in the volcano. Like, what's going on with those teeth? Maybe I can get inside. Like, and then you also have the whole thing of, like, the Hardy Boys are in the game. So the game is pulling you back and forth between being Nancy and one of the Hardy Boys. So it's like, what am I supposed to
Which
be
I feel like
focusing
really disrupted
on?
the end portion of that game when you had to
Yeah,
go
like it's
back and
the
forth
switching of
between.
POVs.
Yes. Because really, it was like the Hardy Boys were supposed to be more focused once they realized about the whole Johnny Kudo or whatever. They were supposed to be figuring that part of the mystery out because Nancy
Yeah.
didn't have an affiliation with that, but the two never met. The two never met. So like they're figuring this out. Nancy, they tell her about it, but she has no association
Well,
with that.
yes.
So it made it very
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah. Well, and it turns out like the Hardy Boys and Nancy's mysteries and end up being more connected than we realized, but we can revisit this in a few minutes. Like the game makes it super hard to trigger the necessary info.
Mm.
So then there's White Wolf of Icicle Queek. White, too many W's in the title. Okay. Icicle Creek. Okay, let's try that again. White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Here we go. So, starts with sabotage. That's straightforward enough. But then it's like, okay, what's going on? Are we focused on the wolf? But also someone's blowing things up. Then it turns out someone's stealing dino bones. Also, there's this needle, and I need to get into the needle. Like what in that game is supposed to have my attention? I don't know. There's just like so many things happening at once. And then Haunting of Castle Malloy kind of like double whammies you with the groom is missing, but also Nancy probably saw a banshee. And then you start to learn more about the Malloy family, which again, it's like that feels a little bit more like they were trying to go for the standard. Okay, we got this family, we're learning more about them, but then it's still like, okay, the groom's still missing. And then it turns out like the groom missing doesn't really have anything to do with the
Exactly.
Malloy family. Like, so yeah, it's all just a jumble. So that is like, so that's kind of like a separate issue from like, do you like how crazy the stories are? Because this is an issue of like, and it sounds like you and I are both the same. Like we play these games and it's like, okay, I don't
Right.
get it.
Right.
So
Which is not a very
so now
fun
we're
way to end a game
yeah,
feeling with
and
that feeling.
yeah. And so we've kind of naturally just segued into this whole idea of like, how does this era do with laying the breadcrumbs? Like both in the sense of helping you figure out who the culprit is, if you care to, but then also just making it so that you feel very satisfied. Like, yes, oh, I understand. Back to that whole like it's all coming together. Like Kronk. Would Kronk be satisfied by the games in this era? Uh, Only some of them. So, whatever thoughts you have for us, Carter, about this, because
Yeah.
now that I've just done the patterns,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
there's some
Well,
struggle.
this is something that both you and I have talked about that I think is very interesting to bring up, especially if you are a fan of these games, you've played these games, and you know about this, is that when it comes to laying these breadcrumbs, right? That game design is a huge issue, particularly in this era, because it's very easy to miss key details that you would need to know to be suspicious about one of the other culprits that are in the game, and to also have a sense of completion of the story. And we can talk about danger by design first, because this is something that I think is very important. Well, one, I'll talk about this because there's always something that, like,
I think I know what you're gonna say.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it only happened to me one time when I played this game, and it wasn't the first time I played it. It was like a later playthrough, but when it happened, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, you're at JJ Ling's apartment. You're at the point where you're having to make these cookies, and you have to get the mint, and the mint makes that right. She's not there, and she won't come back until you finish and complete the cookies. There's a mint shortage. You got to go out and find mint, yada, 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 yada. But in her cabinets, there are two books on engineering, and Nancy will comment on these books. And what's supposed to happen is you are supposed to associate, oh, so JJ knows a little bit about engineering. Could it be possible that she's the one that made the bomb that was on? Oh, another crazy detail about this era. There was a bomb, just a big giant paint bomb that was just put on Manette's door or whatever. But you're supposed to associate the two. But the thing, though, that's hard to trigger is that Nancy should be able to, when she sees JJ again, ask her about him. And then JJ will give you like a whole dialogue tree about like these books and like what she knows. And like, it's super, super, super rare to unlock. I think there
I
is
feel like this is the whole. I feel like this is the holy grail of like
yes.
Nancy Drew triggers. I know so many people who still they're like,
How
I
did you do
gotta get
it?
that trigger.
Yeah.
I've seen Arglefump. Arglefump did an entire stream where he just like kept replaying different parts of the game trying to trigger it.
Yeah, it's super hard. And there is a YouTube
Crazy.
video out there in the world. Like, if you want to just put rare JJ Ling dialogue in YouTube search bar, it'll pop up. But that is supposed to help you have suspicion against her as being someone that would have motive against Manette. If you miss that, then you miss that whole like motive opportunity. Like, you miss that.
Yep.
That affects the breadcrumb laying and how you lead up to who did it. So that's a big one. And you actually put this in, and this is something that I find really interesting about the newspapers in this game, because this is something that I don't know if I've read every single newspaper, but you had
Oh.
mentioned about reading them. Like, so you've read them all, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so this was I think a couple years ago when I replayed Danger by Design. I decided to just max out the newspapers. So
Yeah.
I purposefully kept like as I was playing the game, I kept advancing the days to try to see how many newspapers are
Oh
in the
wow, how
game.
many newspapers are in the game?
I genuinely don't remember, but here's what I do remember.
Is it more
I
than
do
10?
remember I should have double checked that. I'm not sure.
Just
But
curious.
um I mean, it's definitely multiple. And I remember being completely caught off guard because there are these, this is a mild spoiler, like there's these two German guys who are in cahoots with the culprit. And they do call the studio, so you can potentially have a conversation with them then, although I think one of the triggers you can kind of basically like get so they hang up on you or something like that, so you really don't get to interact with them at all. But
Mm-hmm.
there's actually a whole newspaper article that mentions them, like their name.
I didn't know
I'm like,
that.
what? Why would you just bury that information in a newspaper that not all of us are going to read? For two reasons. Because if you don't advance your days enough, you just might not see the newspaper. But also I know there are a lot of people who play the Nancy Drew games and they just want to solve the mystery. They don't really want to read everything that's available. So a lot of people just they even if the newspaper is there, they might just not bother to pick it up. I'm like, how can you hide such essential information in something that's so easy to miss?
Wow, I
So
did not know that, Tori.
I think that's a big
Me cues up Danger
design
by
mistake.
Design later
Yeah.
tonight.
Right. Hey, totally. Like, pull that game up sometime and just advance your days and look at all the newspapers because they're quite interesting. There's some fun.
Ooh.
There's puzzle help in the newspapers and just fun like world building stuff. So
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah, and then Creature of Kapu Cave. You want me to go ahead and talk about this one? Yeah. Because this was another one. I think I discovered it the same year I discovered the newspaper stuff about Danger by Design. Creature of Kapu Cave. Just on a whim, I think this was like 2 years ago. I was replaying the game. And I'm like, and I am a conversational completionist. I'm the kind of person generally when I replay these games, I am trying to exhaust every last bit of dialogue that's available with people. So I knew I was about to go into the volcano as Nancy. And I was like, okay, once I go into the volcano, that's it. Nancy can't talk to anybody else. So I just decided, hey, you know what? I don't really have a reason to. I'm going to go talk to Dr. Craven one more time. Turns out I was completely shocked. There was a conversation option with him that I had never seen before. And was able to find out very important information from him about the secret project that he was working on. And it turns out that project is related to Richard Akins. So then I called Frank and told Frank about it. And then Frank got to talk and have this whole conversation with Richard Akins, where Richard Akins explained his side of the story. And I was like, what is happening? I never knew any of this. And then also I decided to go talk to Quigley one more time and got Quigley to confess like why she had the Healy pass. And I was like, what in the what? Like these people have never told me any of this. And it's all because I was like, I just had the thought of, let me go try to talk to him one more time before going into the volcano. So I will just mention that to all of you people. Like, if you're feeling like, wait, what are you even talking about? Like, go replay this game. And before you initiate volcano sequence, make sure Nancy goes and talks to everybody one more time. And then call Frank as many times as you need to get Frank to do his side of digging things up. And it was
wow. Wow.
I'm glad you haven't streamed this game yet, so that when you stream it,
I know. Now I know. Because I did not know that.
You can unlock this info, because it doesn't explain everything about that game's story, but it certainly explained a lot. And I was mad about it. That it took me this long to realize it was there.
See, but that's our point, though, is that sometimes with this
design,
the game design, it just prohibits you from being able to get all the details you need before wrapping up this mystery. Yep.
They really needed to give Nancy an excuse to go talk to everyone one more time, but they don't.
Exactly. And in the earlier games, I feel like they did give you an excuse, so that was better on their part. But we also mentioned too that sometimes it's just poor writing, and I feel like you would have a really good grasp on things in the golden and classic, but when you would get to this era, you'd get towards the end and it was like Nancy had to info dump to you everything that you would not have been able to uncover on your own, and that's not something that you particularly want out of a mystery, but it happens a lot. And so it happens in these games that we mentioned, these 4 games starting with Danger by Design. You have no like build up to Manette being the person that did it. Like, it's not really something
I don't think so.
Not really something that leads you up to believing that it's her. You had some more suspicion, I think, on Heather out of anyone, and then you get towards the end and it's just like the whole conversation that she has with the 2 German men. Like, you would not have known that until right there at that moment. Like, Nancy just so happened to be in the right place at the right time, and then you just stumble upon the culprit.
That's not sleuthing. That's just getting lucky.
Right. And like, that's no fun.
Nah, it's really not.
Yeah. And then, this is a huge one that I know everybody always talks about, is Creature of Kapu Cave.
Maybe that's the game we should be slandering. Like, it definitely has good elements, but it's so messy.
Every time someone says like, I love the Creature of Kapu Cave, which again, everyone has their onions. They're entitled to their onions. But anytime I've ever really seen anyone, they're like, "Oh, I just love Creature of Kapu Cave so much," and then people are like, "Why? I hate that game." Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, "I love it because you get to walk the beach and you get to collect shells." And I'm like,
They love the vibes.
and that's really all it comes down to, because I don't think anyone's sitting here going, "Wow, the writing of this game is just phenomenal." Because that's not the case. It's not the case, because you get to the end of the volcano and like the Hardy Boys and Nancy now have like officially like met up just by odd circumstance, and we just get info dumped everything that we could have never have known.
It's
Like,
too much.
it is way too much.
It's way too much. I get to the end of that game and I just get so mad. I'm like, why am I just now finding out Big Island Mike's aunt used to own the land the Healy's
Right.
on?
Why didn't we have a piece of paper with that information on it?
Right.
Why didn't we find that?
Yes. Like, why am I just finding out he's got pineapple background? Like, these are helpful things to know, and
Yep.
you are withholding them from me. And
How much more fun would that have been if the Hardy Boys could have found some secret locked
yes.
thing in his
Yeah.
desk or something?
You should have. Okay. Yes.
Or
Give me just a moment to rant about the number of things that Joe Hardy does not get to look at. There's stuff on Big Island Mike's desk, and we can't look at any of it.
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
what's happening?
Or what about like
It's not fair.
an old newspaper article that's like tattered that they like uncrumple, and it's like an article about Big Island Mike and his experience with pineappling or something. I just literally something.
Yeah, and that's not. I don't think that's giving too much of your story away, because we're used to, when we play these games, we're suspicious that everything might be a red herring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like we could have very easily seen it and be like, "Oh no, you're just trying to throw me off." Like, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
So there really is no excuse, I feel like, for not having that info in game. And to me, that game in particular always stands out to me as to like what I had mentioned last week about how these are not Sherlock Holmes stories. Like, we the player are supposed to know everything that Nancy does. We're supposed to know enough to be able to kind of work things out on our own. And that game just makes it impossible.
Yeah.
The fact that you aren't told those things until the very end. I'm just like, that's not fair. How was I supposed to know that? I literally couldn't know that.
Right. And I think, okay, so not to jump around, but I mean, I know we've made our points with these 4 games, but you just brought it up, so I feel like it's great to insert now, is that this era, there's a reason why they withhold some information.
That's true. That's true.
But why? Why do they withhold some information, Tori?
Yes. So some of it, I think, is just, as we said, the oversight, but in some of these cases, it is intentional. They purposefully don't want us to know things because, and we had talked about this in the experimental era episode, loves a good old-fashioned plot twist. They want to just yank the rug out from underneath you and totally catch you by surprise. So there are definitely multiple games, I feel like, in this era where that's some of these issues is part of the reason why they made it impossible for you to figure it out, is because they purposefully wanted to shock. And White Wolf came to mind. And maybe this is me. I'd be curious to know your thoughts from if what you remember when you first played that game. But I remember when I played White Wolf for the first time, they had me hook, line, and sinker, like a 2-foot northern pike. I was on that line. They had me totally convinced that Lou Talbot like was the big bad guy. Like not just that he was stealing dinosaur bones, like, but that he was also responsible for all the other stuff, because Nancy goes into the needle at the very end and his backpack is in there. And
yes.
I bought it. I was like, oh, dude, that guy lied to me. He only told me part of the truth. And I don't like Lou to begin with. So then I was just like, oh, you like, sir, you are dead to me. You're such a liar.
Wow.
They wanted us to think that Lou was the bad guy. Yeah. And so, okay, another spoiler alert incoming. So when Yanni came into the room, I genuinely didn't think anything of it. I thought like, oh, he really is here to help. So I was completely, absolutely shook when
Ah.
Nancy realizes that his arm thing was a detonator.
Oh, that's true.
He's
Yeah. I'm now remembering that ending. And yeah, you're right. The way that they have it structured, it almost is like until you get to that
yeah.
detonator part, you're like,
Yes.
oh.
Yes. Yeah. So I do think that that was absolutely a purposeful, kind of like the Danger on Deception Island a little bit, where
Ah,
they really I feel like wanted to sell you on this person being the bad guy,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then they kind of shifted it right at the very end, like psych. But White Wolf doesn't give you really a whole lot of help to ever figure out that it's Yanni. So
Yeah.
like just whatever. And then Haunting of Castle Malloy.
Oh,
Um, it wants you to be completely surprised towards the end, like, oh, wait. It's like Fiona's not dead. Like she's the
she's
Banshee.
alive.
And then of course I feel like the big one. You want to talk about the biggest one of all? Like
Oh, yeah. Which, okay.
the ultimate spoiler alert for Ransom of the Seven Ships.
But let's also talk about this. Like, you really needed to have some prior Nancy Drew knowledge here. You needed to
That
have
too.
played
That
Stay
too.
Tuned for Danger because Dwayne Powers comes back and he is actually Johnny Roll, which
Yes.
at the time I had not played Stay Tuned for Danger.
Honestly, I hadn't either.
So when it happened, I was like, like, what's happening? Like, I don't know. Who's Dwayne Powers? I had no idea.
That's funny.
Yeah. I think I had to find out based on like whatever, if I had maybe used like a walkthrough or something like for a puzzle, and like the walkthrough had to tell me.
So then that's like it's a great plot twist if it works. But then yeah, what do you do for all the fans who don't know who that
I
is?
know they would have been probably better
Whoopsie.
bringing back a more
Whoopsie.
not like a recent culprit, but a culprit that wasn't from a game that doesn't even work on computers anymore.
Imagine if Johnny Roll had been like, Emily Griffin.
Oh, that would have been wild.
That would have been truly wild.
Like, and
Oh
all
my
of a sudden
word.
her accent comes through. It's me,
Oh,
Nancy.
now I wish. I wish. Oh my
we're
word. Can we
we're
get the
rewriting. We're rewriting
Can we get the
Ransom of the
Rand
Seven Ships.
remaster? Yes, redo. Oh my word. That is the most perfect thing. Well, hey there, Nancy.
Hey there,
Oh my
Nancy.
Oh my word. Okay.
Oh, we
Yeah.
are so funny. Okay, well, anyways, there are some times in this era where the
I feel
games,
like this era is making us extra silly in this episode, so I love it.
yes, but there are some times in this era where there are some like
Not all bad.
little, yeah, they're not all bad. There are some things like there are some great ones too. Like I remember, which we're going to talk about. But do you maybe want to talk about these like really like subtle subplots that they handled really well, and then we'll talk about the really big ones that I think are really fun.
Yeah. So, I do think White Wolf does, despite doing a poor job leading you to Yanni, it does do quite an excellent job leading you to the fact that like Guadalupe's doing some suspicious things, as it turns out, to protect the wolf, because I know there's a conversation like she'll talk to Nancy about she's watching birds, and if you go and look up
Mm-hmm.
the birds on the computer, you can find out like
Yes.
those birds are not in season right now. Like, lady, you are lying to me. And then of course there's the flyer in the shack for that run and grow
Which
free.
you even get to ask her
And
about, by the way. You have a
yes,
whole conversation with her. If
yeah,
you,
or some people also trigger the like the bullet dropping onto the ground,
yes,
and
which is,
she has the magazine in her room where she was marking all the things about Yanni, like potentially
mm-hmm.
changing someone's like rifle sight. So it was all there. And
Very
then
clever.
actually Waverly Academies, it's interesting to me. There's a sense I this to me is just, I don't know quite how they pulled this off. Like, this to me is an example of really great writing. I was absolutely not prepared for Rachel to be two people.
That's what. Yes,
I
biggest
was
plot twist in the Nancy Drew games to me.
completely unprepared, but then I realized I love replaying that game now, because I was like, wait, no, you were telling me the whole time that she's two people, because the whole like not seeming to remember Nancy, and the other girls talking about like she's just kind of weird. We don't know what's going on with her, and again the hair thing that she does.
It
I was
was
like, oh,
all there all
oh.
along.
I remember I was like, oh, you sly dogs, like you were telling me, and I just didn't notice. So and then the big one, if you agree with me, the big two. If you agree, Carter, I do think that Phantom of Venice and Warnings at Waverly do a good job getting you to their like major culprits.
Oh yes. And Phantom of Venice, like that's why the replay can be so fun sometimes, is going back and noticing all those finer details that you didn't notice before. Like I had totally forgot that Elena, she mentions until this past replay when I just played Phantom of Venice, and she says, who knows, the Phantom might be a woman. And like,
She's brazen.
she's ballsy, isn't she? Yeah,
Not
she's
the
just
not the
there.
Phantom, but she was like, yep.
Yeah, yeah, she's just teasing because she knows it's just so good. It's so
Man.
good. And she has this background in doing lots of research and writing, and so she knows a lot about what's going on because she's doing heavy research on it, but also maybe because she's a part of it. She knows all the inner
Mm-hmm.
workings because she knows all of these people because she's the ringleader master, whatever.
Yes, and she'd
Yeah.
done all that research for the other trial.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And there's actually a little detail. I didn't pick up on this until I think the last time I replayed this game. She was at, if you kind of like cross check like the crime dossier against her notebook, you find out like she was at the New Year's Eve party where something was stolen.
Oh, I never even put that
Yeah,
together.
and even
Wow.
though like even though yes, the Phantom's responsible, it's like, well,
But
she
you
was
were
clearly,
also there.
yeah, she was also there, probably giving oversight or who knows what. And I think too, like she's the one that asks about the chocolate.
Mm.
I feel like in an attempt to like just be curious and make it like, oh, I wouldn't ask about them if I didn't know something about them. Like she's
Exactly.
trying to do that whole like mislead you into thinking that
Oh,
she's
yeah.
totally innocent.
I also like that she
Yeah.
also comments on Nancy's locket, which seems to
Yeah.
be like a very, like, everyone talks about the locket. You know what I mean? Like, so,
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, pretty locket. Like I just
yeah.
butchered her accent, but yeah. Hmm. It's all there.
It's
It's all there.
literally all there.
And then even I feel like we just skipped over the super big one because the game actually draws attention to it when they have you run into her outside the
Oh,
car,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they make sure that you get that little like 1 second to see the envelope on the ground,
Yeah.
and then they actually made a plot point that when Nancy gets to the um safe room at the end, she's like, wait, like that was on Helena's envelope. So I love it. And what do you think about Waverly?
Oh yeah, well actually the whole twin thing was like the biggest thing for, like, seriously,
That's true.
when I think
That's true.
about the biggest plot twist in Nancy Drew games, I always think of Warnings of Waverly Academy. But in the more like defined sense, which just like Phantom of Venice, I agree with you. I think it's like all there, and going back and replaying it, you can see how disgruntled Corrine is with her comments. That, it starts at the very beginning. She's like, "Welcome to our humble dwelling space." Like she's like just very frazzled, like all the time, and you can just tell the way she talks about her relations with everybody else at the school. Like she wants to be popular, she wants to have friends, but there's this like, you know, yeah, but it's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there in her
And it's
comments.
very, and also particularly very, you can see like she really, really, even though she acts like she wants to be friends with Izzy,
Oh yeah.
she clearly hates Izzy's guts. I always remember, do you remember this line? I can hear it like in my head right now. Welcome to my world, Queenie. Like just the way she says that.
Yeah.
Oh, like,
Oh,
oh, her
such a
bad
good
side.
game.
Her bad side came out in that moment.
Yes. But
And
also
she's the
too,
English. She's the English girl.
she's the English girl. Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
It's like,
So
oh,
it just
why'd you
makes
have
so
to
much
make the English girl
sense.
the culprit? Rude.
But it just makes sense that she would know all the things about Edgar Allan Poe and be an expert upon him. So yeah, it's all there. The elements are all there, and it's really fun when you go back and replay these games because you can pick up on those elements. So you made an interesting note here about the story concepts in the
Oh,
credits.
yes. Um, just wanted to mention again that the experimental era is when story concept shows up in the credits. You'll see usually it was either Robert Riedel or the creative director you'd see as one of the names, and then when Kathy Reuter joined towards the end, you'd see her, and then I think Anne Collins Ludwig was listed under some of them too. I just thought it was interesting that they actually started drawing attention to and how they were crediting their team, like
Mm-hmm.
who on the team is kind of responsible for envisioning this whole story. Because as to my knowledge, like I do think, and it probably becomes, I think, the most prevalent in this era and then afterwards, that they were doing a lot more kind of just to, rather than taking one of the books and doing an adaptation of it, and you could very easily see like, okay, here's the book, I can see how they got to the game. Like I think it became much more like they still had to have a connection to a book in some way, but it was a lot like it was very much more minor.
Yeah.
And I think her interactive was doing a lot more to create their own original storylines rather than kind of just tweaking and adapting things that already existed. So I think it's
Yes.
just more, I don't know, I just feel like maybe that's also why, that's probably why maybe some of these stories are more like out there and maybe sometimes don't come together as neatly as we would like them to. Because, like, I'm not a writer in that way, but I know enough to know, like, it's really hard to come up with a good story and dot all your I's and cross all your T's.
Especially
So,
with mystery, right? Because you have to have
yeah,
enough suspicion on everybody, but you also have to tie up their loose ends towards
takes a
the
special
end.
skill.
Absolutely. And actually, I wanted to mention, first of all, I really enjoyed that you made that note. Thank you. Because it almost was like a callback to Her Interactive Family Tree, which, oh, so fun, so fun. But no, I wanted to say, I actually have been prepping this week and reading a book because I'm going to be doing uh, uh, the River Heights Buzz podcast.
Oh,
We're doing an episode this week together, and I had been prepping because I've been reading the book that Trail of the Twister is based off of, and this has been very exciting for me because I've actually never read a book that was supposed to be linked and based off an Nancy Drew game. So this is my first time ever
except for
doing
like the
that.
really old ones, right?
Oh yeah,
I
except
think
for the
you,
really old ones.
yeah, but those don't, I feel like those don't really count in the
Right,
same
right,
way.
right. Because
I get what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. And this one though, I started reading it, and it's very wild. Like it's a very wild story and very wild book, but it was already 10 times better than the actual Trail of the Twister. And I think that
Oh, okay.
it's interesting because we're looking at like exactly what you said. There's a lot of like separation from the book. Like we're just going to use the general idea of the book, but we're really going to pour in the details of our own story, because the two could not be so much more different from the fact that it's just tornadoes, and that's the only similarity they have, to be honest with you. They're very different, but I really enjoyed the story in the book a lot better. But just wanted to point that out, that it's interesting that that's what we're getting into. We're getting into much more individualized stories, and we definitely see that in this next era because it becomes very,
Talk to me about it.
yes, it becomes very personal about the soul center of the whole games itself, what they're named after. Nancy Drew. It's
Yeah.
all about Nancy and her life, which we've talked about in that era
And
before.
do you want to just mention before we get into the
Yes, yes,
nitty
yes.
gritty? Yes, what something Kalina. Thank you, Kalina. She was actually able to
Yeah.
confirm some information for us a few weeks ago.
This is okay, this which is great because this is something that um again, I feel like just reinforces where we're feeling this shift at. And that is at Shadow Water's Edge, which was our outlier game, like this in between transitional game. This was the first game from concept to completion that Nick and Kathy designed and wrote, if you remember our family tree. So this is like the beginning of their era of games, and they have a very
Yes.
specific style in how they do things. Um and it gets real deep into a lot of
Yeah.
story elements that we're going
Yeah,
to
I
talk
think
about with
you
these games.
yeah, I think you should how about you start?
Sure.
Because now we can talk a little bit more in depth of some of these game spanning storylines because there are
Sure.
several.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm so glad you mentioned that specific wording, like spanning over across multiple games. It's not just like we're going from game to game. It kind of really is like an arc over the entire era. Like you got to play all of these games in an order to get a sense of where we're at in the Nancy Drew universe. And the first is that it starts at the very beginning of this era with the Captive Curse is Nancy and Ned's relationship tension. It starts really well, it started bubbling in the experimental era, but it really got to full boil when we got to
Yeah.
Captive Curse and stayed full boil until the end of this era. You know, Nancy's wanting this freedom to go out and do all these adventures, and she doesn't want to feel held back, like she has some responsibility left back home that she has to worry about. But Ned wants to be a part of her life. They want, Ned doesn't want to hold Nancy back. Nancy doesn't want to hold Ned back. It's just this relationship building up, and it goes all the way until we get to the very end of Sea of Darkness, where it's this question of you forgot my anniversary, and do you care about this relationship? So like we see that throughout the entire era, like from game to game to game. There's tension, and does she choose Ned or maybe Frank?
Or herself, I suppose.
Yeah, or just be independent, like single detective. Yeah.
And Nancy, we got more to say about them down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I feel like probably this is the biggest one.
Probably so.
Um, is Nancy processing her mom's death. And we don't want to just rehash some things that we already brought up in the personal era episode. But again, just to remind you all, Carter and I kind of made the argument that Shadow at the Water's Edge is actually more about Nancy than any of us realized, because it was Nancy interacting with a family who had lost, like these two girls had lost their mom. So I think that was kind of the first seed planted. And then Tomb of the Lost Queen, they made a very obvious parallel, I feel, between Jamila and Nancy, because you find out that Jamila is part of this organization called the Daughters of Nefertari, and Jamila ended up in that line of work. She's following in her mom's footsteps. Her mom died doing that work, and now Jamila is trying to like break the cycle and finish what her mom started. Like, oh no, does that feel like foreshadowing the Silent Spy, you think? Like, Nancy also, like, her mom died doing important, dangerous work, and it kind of propels Nancy into not spy life, but detective life's pretty similar to spy life. And this is actually, I don't know if you, because I know it's been like a long time since you've played this game.
Which
right?
one?
I think Tomb of the Lost Queen.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's one of the ones like you haven't played the games in that era like very much, and
No.
some of them you haven't played in a long time. Yeah.
Tomb of the Lost Queen,
So
like less than 3 times, maybe.
okay,
No
well,
joke.
I don't know if I'm about to tell you something, like if you even know about this conversation.
I don't
but
think I do,
like,
and so that's I'm like looking at. I'm like, no, I don't recognize this. So I'm actually very
okay.
interested to listen. To I don't know.
Okay, this like explosions in my brain when I had this conversation. I'm like, oh my word, like yeah, they really did have plans in motion for this era. There's a conversation that you can have with Bess where Nancy will talk to Bess about this whole Daughters of Nefertari thing, and she's like can you imagine like just doing that, like, because of, what Jamila doing that because of what happened to her mom. And Bess is like, well, yeah, actually, I can't imagine that because Bess actually, like, straight up says this. She tells Nancy, like, I thought the whole reason why you started solving mysteries is because of what happened to your mom.
Oh.
Like, and
Mm.
then Bess is like, oh, wait, like, I need to work on my filter. I shouldn't have said that. Because Nancy's all like, oh, wow, I never thought of it that way. But I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, I think they already knew then that they knew exactly what
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to do with Silent Spy. I'm like,
Wow.
there's
And
literally
we caught
no
on
other,
to that without
there's
knowing
literally,
this.
there's literally no other reason to have Bess say such a, like,
A blurt.
really, yeah, like, blurt out such a big statement like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Unless it is because the Silent Spy is coming. And I think the Silent Spy really does, in a lot of ways, kind of prove the point. Like, oh, Bess was totally right. I think Nancy is driven deep, deep down. Like, she wants to solve mysteries because of what happened to her mom.
Yeah. Mm.
And then Ghost of Thornton Hall, um,
Phew.
like, Nancy's mom doesn't come up in the game at all, but it doesn't feel accidental to me that that game is basically, its whole story revolves around the relationship between a daughter and her mom. So, and there's trauma there that has to be worked through.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Silent Spy is the
That's the
climax. Like,
climax.
this is when we're gonna deal with. And then we will just mention this one, but oh my goodness, is a deep dive coming for you all. There's tons of build up to Sunny June in this era, and that's all we're gonna say for right now. But
Until next week.
yes, yes, yep, we have
But
much to say. All
what's
right, so that's
interesting
the
too
storyline.
is that the stories in this era, in these games, they are more like real in a sense of like human. Like
Yes, you
there's
remember our
yeah.
golden era conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's relevant here
Yes.
as we talk about this. Like,
Yes.
feels different.
It does feel different. It all it
Anyway, I
no
just wanted to
no
bring that in, but please keep going.
no like that you're right though. There's a connection there that was skipped over in the experimental era. The experimental era was really it was fun. It was like lighthearted. It was about all these fantastical things, but it was
Yeah.
missing a lot of that. Like I mean,
It has some.
it has
Like
some, but like
like
Shadow Ranch
the
cry
girl
tears
drama.
on the diary because
Yeah.
oh you know what I mean? Like but in this era, it's a lot of that again. Like in Shadow at Water's Edge, man, I felt the heaviness of like what was happening amongst that family of like people thinking things but not wanting to say it. I felt that so strongly. Like, you know, I mean, like they're not talking to each other, they're not communicating because they're all stricken
Yeah.
with grief and guilt. And like that's so evident in this game. But
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of those really like strong interpersonal conflicts and human emotions in every game. I know it happens a little bit in Captive Curse. Like, if you want to talk about, like, I guess how she feels in that game.
Yeah. Anya, oh, she's poor girl. She's bitter.
Mm-hmm.
Bitter as anyone can be. And that whole storyline ultimately revolves around, like, she just wants to get revenge on
Right.
Marcus because he broke her heart. And even just the other characters in that game, like, you find out, like, Carl's got someone he's in love with, but he feels like he can't be with her. Lucas feels very lonely. And then Renata, but this is a storyline that's more difficult to trigger, but you could find out that Renata's dealing with quite a lot of guilt and regret over something that happened to her
Yeah.
sister when they were kids.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps going with the very, like, human stories, interpersonal conflict.
I know
So,
in Alibi and Ash, I definitely felt
mhm,
I felt so much for Alexi. Like I felt for him. I was
that,
so I was just so stricken with emotion that he felt so, you know, hurt by the community that he wanted to serve because they turned against him and he knew he was innocent. He didn't even do it. I just so much to say there. And then you got the whole culprit Brenda, who's like just enraged with wanting to get
Yeah.
revenge on Nancy, and Ghost Thornton Hall. That's like
Holy
all.
trauma, Batman.
It's a whole Dr. Phil episode right there. I mean,
Okay, yes, please. You just nailed it.
I mean, really. I mean, it's just there is so much to unpack in that game. We don't even have to really get into it. It's just we can just say
No,
the game is really
we
all we need to
we
say.
literally can't.
Yeah,
There's too
and then
much.
Silent Spy, of course. There's a lot of just and a lot of character development in terms of like Ned and Carson and Nancy and how the three like
Oh,
work
that's true.
together.
Yeah.
It's just there's, I guess, and I said this earlier, and I didn't even know we were going to get really too deep into this with the personal era, but I think that's why with this particular set of games, I just feel so much more strongly like about it's a heavy time to be playing these games because they're gonna hit you with some very heartfelt emotions in this particular era, and it'll continue onward. But I think you have mentioned something that you saw with the Nancy Drew games that's very interesting in reference to these emotions that we're feeling.
Yeah. So, just my onion
I like
from
it.
observing, and this is a more of I feel like a general just how storytelling as a whole, just in the entertainment world, has shifted. And the best way I know how to explain this is think about the difference between old Disney movies and newer Disney movies. So older Disney movies, and I'll even lump like the 90s, like that was Disney's golden era, was the stuff that came out like in the 90s. But okay, so Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, they just have classic like their fairy tales with a very classic like evil stepmom, Maleficent, evil fairy who turns into a dragon, and you need a prince to help save the day, or like the Wicked Witch, like the evil queen turning into this hag in Snow White. And then the Disney movies, like again, like Little Mermaids got Ursula, you got Scar in that era, you got Gaston. Like these to me are very kind of classic, like they're villains in the most classic sense of the word. We don't wonder about like, oh, I wonder what happened to them to make them that way. Like what like we're just not concerned about that. Like the bad guy is the bad guy. Period. That's all I need to know. You just need to defeat the bad guy. And then Disney and others, but again, Disney is the one I know best. Like Disney over time has felt like shifted more and more into trauma. Everything is trauma. Let's figure out like what we
You're
don't just have
so right.
we don't just have villains anymore. Now we need to unpack like everybody's trauma.
Hmm.
So this happens like, there's
What
their
made them
live
into a villain?
actions. Yes, so there's the live actions like, the movie Maleficent. Literally that whole movie exists to give Maleficent a reason for becoming a villain. But
Hmm.
then even with their animated ones, like they did it like Frozen, for example, like they kind of make Elsa like a villain because she's feels very like an outsider and she doesn't know how to fit in. And then I mean there is like, I mean, Hans, he's more of a classic bad guy, but like it's very much about like Elsa and Anna and their relationship as sisters. And then I know Encanto, I've only seen Encanto once, but I know Encanto gets a ton into like that family's like trauma and their background, and there's not really like a villain in the true sense of the word. So what I see is I feel like Her Interactive went the same direction as Disney did, where they kind of moved away from, again, go back, think classic era, golden era. I do not wonder what happened to Andy Jason to make him want to sabotage a boat and steal fur coats. Like, what
Right.
happened to Emily Griffin to make her want to steal gold? Why does Lewis
Right.
want El Diablo's treasure? Like, they're just bad guys. Period. I don't wonder anything. And then this era gets much more into everybody's got trauma or like and not just the culprit, but just like everybody's got trauma in some way. Like again, Shadow at the Water's Edge, that whole family, they're all wrestling with something. Ghost of Thornton Hall, they're all wrestling with something. And Ghost of Thornton Hall's culprit is very motivated by like, her sense of like personal struggle and her fears about things. And it's all very psychological. Like I just feel like this era becomes, it's all about like, let's just get into people's like minds and their motives and what makes them like who they are and makes them want to act the way they do. And the same deal with like Nancy. This era gets very much into like what makes Nancy Nancy. Again, I just to go back, I don't want to just rehash it, but again, Bess telling Nancy, you became a detective because of what happened to your mom. That's a trauma comment.
Yep.
That is saying Nancy Drew is a detective because of trauma in her life.
Yep. And not just because she's loves a good mystery or she's curious.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally just because of that one thing.
Something happened to her that made her this kind of way of needing to get answers for things.
Yep.
Because she lost her mom and she doesn't have answers.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're getting into with this last era, and then definitely this era, is that her interactive is taking off and like defining these, like we always knew in the books, like Nancy's mom was absent, right? But here they're giving a whole like very fantastical element of like, yeah, well, what happened to her mom, and could that have been the reason why she likes to solve mysteries today?
Yes. I feel like that I love the way you just said that, like, could that be the reason? Like, what happened? Could that be the reason? I feel like with just about every character in this era in some way, they're constantly asking the question, like, what happened to this person? And could this be the reason why they're acting this way? They do it so many times.
Oh yeah, and you've actually made a really great, interesting point about this era in their games and how, like, prior to, we were doing a lot of storylines and mysteries that were, interweaved with a historical figure or someone from, a long time ago, and that it helps solve the present day mystery. But now it's a little bit different, and you note that it's for every game in this era. So maybe if you want to tell us more about how that affects us in this gameplay.
Yeah. So I realized in working on the notes for this episode that they shift to, in this era, they make, rather than having a historical figure who's kind of driving the mystery we're trying to solve, they revolve it around like someone in the present day. And I mean present day in the sense it's either someone who is still alive or someone who just like very recently died. And then what happens is you have like the suspects in the game, like they actually know the person. And that means, and I think this fits right into you talking about like there's just like a heaviness to this era. That makes it harder for us as the player. Like we can't distance ourselves and feel detached in the same way. Like, and again, I absolutely feel for Meryl, Francis, Dirk, but at the same time, there's a certain level of like detachment to that story because they lived so long ago.
Yes.
And there's not anyone on the ranch who like actually knew any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So this era, on the other hand, Shadow at the Water's Edge, revolves around Kasumi. Every single suspect in that game knew Kasumi. And in the case, like 3 of the 4 of them are intimately related to her. They're either her daughters or her mother. And then Alibi and Ashes, that game technically is about Nancy herself. So we're learning how do her like arch nemesis relate to her? How does Alexi relate to her? How do her friends relate to her? Deadly Device, Nico. Everybody who works in that building knew Nico. Ghost of Thornton Hall, Charlotte Thornton. They're all like all of them except Colton is related to her. in
Yeah.
some way.
Like they have some like
And then
closer relationship with.
yes. Yep, and then but of course, even though Colton's not related to Charlotte, he still knew her and
Yeah.
was impacted by her dying. And then Silent Spy, of course, is about Kate Drew. So it's very, very particularly about like Nancy and Carson and how they feel about all of that. Shattered Medallion is about Sunny June. And then Sea of Darkness, at least at the start, kind of revolves around, Magnus. Like what happened to Magnus and it kind of like plays like we actually are kind of left like, is Magnus alive or is he dead? Like we don't even know. But then again, everyone in that village like knows Magnus. So to me, it just creates it's just such a different feel because now we're not trying to do things like, okay, let's find the treasure. Let's find out why, the inn is getting sabotaged. I feel like the mysteries in this era, again, I guess the best way I know how to describe it is they feel all very psychological. Like it's much more about who is this person? Like what are they like? What secrets did they have? Like what kind of impact did they have on the people around them? And I would say in particular, like Shadow at the Water's Edge, Ghost of Thornton Hall, Silent Spy, Shattered Medallion. I feel like all of those games, that's really what they're ultimately about. Like trying to learn like more about this particular person. Like Kasumi, Charlotte Thornton, Kate Drew, Sunny June. And trying to like suss out like, okay, like what kind of impact does this person have? And like
Oh yeah,
what
that's
can we learn
interesting.
about
Yeah,
them?
that there's like almost like a centered, focused person for the entirety of the
Yeah.
game. Like this game is
Yeah.
centered around Sunny June. This one is Kate
Yes.
Drew, and this one is that's very interesting.
And I please tell me I'm not making this up. Did you not? Was it part of the podcast? I could swear, Carter. Did you not say to me somewhere recently
I did.
that you were like, wait, like all the game, like
I did.
most of the game covers in this era have a person on the
Yes.
cover?
Yes.
Okay,
I
I
know.
was like, I'm
Well,
not
I said it
imagining that,
because
am
I
I?
noticed when I was making the graphic for like each era, and I was putting all the covers next to each other, and then making my little,
Mhm.
this is personal era. Well, I made the personal era one, and I was like, oh, this is like the first time in pretty much all the games where it's like face, 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 face. It wasn't like you go back to the actually, if you go back to the classic and golden covers, you'll notice like it's a shadowy figure. You don't know who it is.
Oh yes, you're
And
right.
Secrets Can Kill even doesn't count because the remastered one had the people on, which would have come out around the Shadow at Water's Edge time, where they actually put like a face and like people. So like there was very people centered, people focused this era where, I mean, Captive Curse, Alibi and Ashes, Tomb of the Lost Queen, Deadly Device, Ghost of Thornton Hall, Silent Spy, Shattered Medallion. Every single one has a
Yeah.
person or a face on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like, again, that just further reemphasizes the link here that we have to the more like human aspect of the storytelling that they're trying. I mean, like they're getting more into that finer connection that we're supposed to feel. I made a really great point about how you felt like there's still some sort of distance because maybe these people are so from so long ago, but this is a little bit more current, and I feel like that just brings into the conversation why this era maybe feels so dark is because these mysteries, they are like this like higher stake, have darker mystery. They're just more mature. Each of these games here are talking about going into a conversation of topics that are much more intense and in depth than we've ever had before in Nancy Drew games. Just at the very start, the Shadow at Water's Edge, I know this was the first time that I was not just spooked or scared, but straight up terrified. Like this game was terrifying to me. I don't know, was it for you? Was it your first time being absolutely terrified
Yeah,
in an Nancy Drew
it is.
game?
I'm willing not on replays, but in terms of first time Nancy Drew playthroughs, it is without a doubt the scariest Nancy Drew game ever played.
Yes.
I was so scared, freaked out.
Yeah, so scared, freaked out. And, just some of the topics that it kind of goes into with uh that are more intense, with Deadly Device. It's straight up murder, right? Ghosts of Thornton Hall is a lot of
Well,
like,
since you brought up Deadly Device, do you agree with me? Because I think somehow Deadly Device, like even though Secrets Can Kill also has a murder, like Deadly Device just feels inherently like more dangerous.
oh yeah. Yeah, there's something more
I don't know quite how to
sinister.
explain it,
Something
but
more
yeah,
sinister with that one,
it feels
right?
worse.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And then
Okay.
you've got Ghosts of Thornton Hall. It's about a lot of like just family secrets and cover up about this thing that happens that nobody wants to talk about. And then we have straight up terrorism in Silent Spy. Labyrinth of Lies, there's a crime ring, and then, you know, these things all kind of pour into the fact that there's a lot more maturity that's being
Yeah.
played out in this era.
Labyrinth of Lies was also another one I just wanted to mention. Again, as a contrast, like has a similar story to Phantom of Venice, kind of.
Yeah.
Because there's like this ring of people working
Mm-hmm.
together to steal art. But again, Labyrinth of Lies feels way more dangerous.
Yes.
I don't know if it's because like I know Xenia, she's just very intense as a person, and then also Thanos, like he's in Kronos, and I always remember like Frank and Joe calling Nancy kind of in a panic, like this is a really bad dude, like he's killed people. Yeah, so it's just that's kind of where it's very interesting to me. Those ones where it might be kind of a very similar story to something earlier in the series, and yet it just feels way like darker and more
Mm-hmm.
intense.
Oh yeah. But I feel like it brings into question then with this particular era, was Her Interactive trying to, take these games and make them a bit more age appropriate for the audience that grew up with them?
That's always what I've wondered about. Because people like me, I was like college age
Yeah.
when these games were coming out.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
It's like
I don't
because
know if
the
they were
campiness
playing it
of
up.
the earlier games faded as the games continued to come out. Like the games
Yeah.
start off a lot more like kid appropriate, I feel like, to where they're like imagine with me. I'm just throwing this out here and we'll probably get into it here in a minute. But imagine yourself playing your first game the age you were. Now imagine you're the same age but you're playing Mystery of the Seven Keys. Yeah. There's a big difference, isn't it?
Uh-uh.
Or imagine you're the same age and you're playing Ghosts of Thornton Hall.
No, 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 no. No
Right?
way.
Like it's a different vibe there. Like again, don't even have to explain. I'm just giving that out there as something to think about. But I feel like something that I know you and I have lightly discussed when we did talk about this era, but how do you feel about Nancy Drew's stories and games being more mature?
Yeah, this is the question that I feel literally it's only time is the only reason why I know how to answer this one. So, I feel like I go back and forth. In one sense, like now that I'm an adult, I do appreciate, having these games that are kind of unafraid to wander into some weightier topics, but I sit more kind of where I feel like you are based on even how you talked in the personal era. To me, it's the continual, like it's the back to back. Like almost like you get no relief from it. Like
Yeah.
where it's just sometimes one heavy thing after another or a more mature thing. Like it starts to feel like, oh my word, like how do I escape this? It's like a cloud just sitting over. And maybe it's because like I'm the kind of adult like I want to keep it's very important to me like I want to keep my kind of like childlike spirit of wonder and
Oh,
fun and
absolutely.
and imagination alive. Like I don't want the cynicism of adulthood to like kill that. And so I guess I find now, like, even though I do appreciate that they kind of delve into those topics, I'm just like, you know what? The world is ugly enough. I don't think
Amen.
I don't need my Nancy Drew games to be about this. I'm like, yes,
1000%.
please give me the campy, silly, like experimental era and earlier. And not to say I like the personal era games in their own way, but I
Yeah.
have settled on pretty much like I can't love them in the same way because they feel different. Too grown up.
I I am
I don't need more grown up in my Nancy.
I am very much on the same page with you. Very much on the same page with you. I feel the same way. I don't even think I have much to add because I'm the same way as far as like that campiness, that childlikeness that is of the, you know, golden and some of the experimental and even the classic. Some of those games, the vibes that they have in that game are just um even if something is of dire need, like the final scene, something can still be lighthearted about it when you have to call what's her name in the final scene that you have to call.
I don't see
Is it
Eustacia?
Eustacia?
Oh yeah.
That makes me feel like you know what I mean? Like and I think
Yes, how can
that's
a woman talk so much about being almost dead and yet be it's so like gentle and funny.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
so I just think that like you have to have that balance in order to that, and that's why it's interesting because we mentioned it in the experimental era. Like, why come it's like you pick these games out, and you're like, yeah, something about those games, right? It's the same way with this era. Why is it that everyone's always like, oh, Alibi and Ashes, right? Like, why is there something
I definitely
lighthearted?
am.
Yeah, no, I am
I
too.
I'm
But
developing such
why?
like a deep obsession with that
But
game, I
why?
feel like.
Why is there something that all people kind of gravitate towards a particular game out of an era? I think it's because there's something that that game does right that the other games are missing, and that's the fact that it still gives you some lightheartedness when things are like Nancy's arrested, like there's someone out in revenge for her, the town's kind of like against her, but it's so fun to see the Ned and Deirdre drama back and forth. Hey, Nedster. Like, that's so fun. It's
Yeah,
so
and it's like
fun.
romantic drama, but it's funny.
But it's so fun to see Bess slurping on a milk. She's like, oh, I've had like 5 milkshakes and I'm so full. Like, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great because you have to have some relief like that. And that's more part of, I think, the campiness and the greatness about like what makes the Nancy Drew games not feel so heavy like
Yeah.
the personal era does, where it's just straight, just grief, trauma, turmoil, and sadness. The entire like tone of the game is that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I do also, I think, again, we just want to throw in a little caveat. Like, please don't take, again, Carter and I, we just have onions. We're not saying, if if you're listening to this and you really love the maturity and the darkness of some of these stories, like, we're not coming after you. Like, that is, you are allowed to love them for being more weighty as a Nancy Drew game, because some fans, I think they do want more darkness in their game. That's
I
not where we
but
land.
that's fine, but I say let not the
Yeah,
Nancy Drew games.
yeah, that's not where you and I. But I did just want to throw that in, so we don't.
Yes,
So if
yes,
anyone's
yes.
listening and feeling
But
like,
hopefully by now
we're
you know in
alienating
this
them,
podcast that we just sharing our onions.
yeah. But at the same time, the way people, especially we when we had the modern era conversation, everyone's like wishing
Yeah.
that the modern era had the charm.
Yes.
I do think a lot of people probably maybe are more on our side of things. Like, they
It's true.
miss the silliness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But then I guess like we'll kind of like start to get more in the
Wrap this
wrap up
era
of
up.
this era. Yeah,
Yeah.
you talk about the mystery patterns here. What's
Yeah, I
going
actually
on?
I don't really have a whole lot to say about the patterns themselves, more the problems that they create. So, some of them I will just mention. Pattern 1, I think Captive Curse, Alibi and Ashes, Deadly Device, Labyrinth of Lies. They have kind of one mystery that they stay focused on. Monster sightings, who set the town hall on fire, who killed Nico, like what's going on with all this missing artwork. Those are straightforward. I was actually having a hard time, and this is kind of where I just want to bring this up to lead into our next conversation. I feel like the other games in this era, they just, some of them they don't conform to the pattern very well. I was having a really hard time saying clearly, like, yeah, this is definitely like fits the pattern. And I just want to go ahead and move right into there. I feel like this era, and I know you've thoughts about this. We both have thoughts about this. This era,
oh boy,
has some problems. Has some problems, and we can talk about any thoughts we have about why. I just feel like these games sometimes they just don't they just don't know how to hold themselves together. They kind of just like start and then they kind of just off into
they
like
just watercolor everywhere.
yeah. I don't like I'm struggling for words because
Someone
ones,
I dare
get really
someone
messy.
I dare someone listening to write me a paper about what the heck the Shatter Medallion is even about, because I doubt you can write me a paper and summarize it, because I don't think anyone knows.
The best way I know how to explain is multiple of the games in this era, I get to the ending, I'm like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? Like, how did we get there? Like,
Yeah.
why is that person the culprit? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have thoughts, but before I share any of my ponderings about what might be going on, I'm just wondering if you have anything specific like to comment on. I mean, I know this is a big struggle for you. You brought it up in our other episode.
Yeah.
Like you felt confused by these games.
Yes, and I won't get too like in depth with it, because I know I talked a little bit about it in the era episode. I just know that I felt a way, and it started in Shadow at Water's Edge, but it wasn't too bad then. But then it like went up a notch a little bit with Captive Curse, and it just, I feel like, continued to like climb up with Confusion every time I played a game in this era. It was just, I would literally start the game and I would get so excited about it. I'd be like, ooh, yeah, another Nancy Drew game. Let's dive in. And then I'd get into it and I'd be like, okay, what am I doing? I would start talking to people and be like, they would have the dialogue with one character. I would finally, after clicking through 12 million questions, I would end the conversation and be like, I have no idea what we just talked about. Let's go find a puzzle to do. Let's go find some piece of paper. I'll be like, I have no idea what's going on. And you know why I know that the dialogue was too much? It's because they offered a skip button. I was like, nothing should never be a reason why we need a skip button unless there's just too much time. I guarantee you someone on the team was like, y'all, this is too much. We need a skip button. Like, this is too much. And that is just all the proof I need to know that obviously somebody else on the team was like, I don't know what's going on. I think this is too in depth, yada, yada. And that's just how I felt. That's how I felt playing the games. I still feel that same way, is that I'm here to solve a mystery, but I don't even know what, who, why, when, where, how is going on.
Yeah. It's confusion.
Yes. But I'd like to hear your thoughts.
All right. Yeah. I mean, drawing your attention to dialogue, that I think that it's information overload, which creates problems. And I just so some things I've been wondering about. Again, this is tying into with this, because I feel like because they tried so often to make a lot of these games revolve around like a person, like let's just deep dive. Speaking of deep diving, like, let's just deep dive into Kate Drew or Sunny June or whoever. Because it created a different kind of mystery. A lot of times I feel like culprits it's like they're almost like an afterthought in this era.
Oh,
where
yeah, that's a good
it's like,
point.
oh wait, like, oh yeah, this is a Nancy Drew game, so it needs to have a culprit. So we got to come up with something. Um, this is this is not a criticism of Shadow at the Water's Edge per se, because I do think that one overall it does fine. However, just throwing it out there, I don't think Rentaro is super necessary to that story. Not if you stop
Mm,
and think about it. I feel like that game is so much about Kasumi.
yeah.
Like, why? Why does Rentaro even need to be haunting the inn? Um, it just it feels a little bit like they wanted to have a culprit, so they made it him. Like, and that one works fine. So I don't want to dog it, but I don't know, just a thought I've had. And then Silent Spy. You and I have talked about this game. We've tried to figure out what the heck is going on with this game. And I'm gonna give you the very specific. Zoe, towards the end of the game, looking Nancy dead in the eye and saying, "This all points to Ewan." And I'm just like, it does? That's news to me. Like, since when? I, how? 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 I don't know. And they
Too
tell us a
much.
bunch of things. They tell us a bunch of things at the end about how Revenant like pulled him in and took advantage of him because he was a little fish in a big pond and he wanted to make something of himself. But I don't get it. Like, I'm I feel like, again, we're spending so much time focusing on Kate Drew. It's like they just threw, we gotta have someone, so here, have Ewan. That's how it feels to me.
Oh, yeah.
And then
The biggest one, in my
Shatter
opinion.
Medallion. Okay, no, what Carter mentioned about the paper. Let's make it. We'll make it even easier for you, and you're still gonna fail. I'm almost willing to bet money you're still gonna fail at this mission. Write us a paper. Tell us how Kiri is the culprit of that game. No one's gonna send the paper because you can't.
Nobody knows.
It makes no sense.
No
Like, if,
sense.
if you can give me a very articulate explanation for what is going on with Kiri in that game, like, I bow down to you. You are truly the smartest person in the Clue Crew. I don't know. But again, I feel like that game, they just wanted a Sunny June game, but they were also like, oh well, we gotta have a culprit. We don't dare make Sunny June, even though they kind of like play at the idea of maybe Sunny June caused the bridge accident that hurt George. Like, they knew in their hearts, like, it would have been a very bad PR move to make Sunny June a bad guy. So they're like, oh, okay, Kiri. Like, I don't know. That's how it feels to me.
I felt the same way. I felt the same way.
And then again, this is to me, this is just a writing issue. I just feel like these games, just in the way they wrote them, they just kind of they had all these threads, all these subplots, all these things that they wanted to pursue, all this dialogue they wanted to include. And they just don't know how to make it all fit together. And so it's very disjointed and confusing and unsatisfying. And very specifically, I mean, I already mentioned Shatter Medallion, so I won't harp on it again, but like Tomb of the Lost Queen, Ghost of Thornhall, Silent Spy. I keep replaying those games and hoping something's gonna click.
That's just not okay. Like, for a
And
game,
it
like, you
it
should
has
not have
not.
to be this many years later still replaying it, trying to figure
Still
out what's
replaying
going
them
on.
and hoping all the things will click, and they still
Ay,
haven't
ay,
clicked.
ay, ay, ay.
All right, so I just think, bad writing is bad writing. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
But one more other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of similar to how the experimental era loved a good plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is a purposeful choice in this era on her's part. It's like they wanted to leave certain things open ended. Like, they just purposefully made the choice not to give the player closure.
Oh, yeah.
So for example, Captive Curse plays with the idea, which this is not the first time the games had done this, but again, they played with the idea of Anya might come back someday to get revenge. So you don't totally feel like there's closure there, because there's like this niggling, like, ooh, what if she finds us again someday? Alibi and Ashes does not tell us what Nancy put in the time capsule. She's just like, you can figure it out. Oh, okay. No, I don't know. People have theorized. I don't know what's in there. Ghost of Thornton Hall. Ghost of Thornton Hall actually, it leaves it, I feel, pretty open ended about what's going on with the haunting. It kind of, I know some of them, Jesselyn and Harper are responsible for. They also kind of toy with this idea of maybe everyone was just hallucinating because of carbon monoxide poisoning, but they don't put their stake in the ground on that. Like that game just saw us like, I don't know. There really is a ghost, and they just leave it in the air. Silent Spy, we never are actually told any of the specifics of what
Which
happened to Kate
makes
Drew.
me mad because I want to know.
Okay, I totally understand why you feel that way. I have thoughts about that. This episode is not time for that conversation. We should talk about that sometime. I'm
Sure.
actually okay with them leaving that one open ended.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when the whole game is
But
supposed to
yes,
build up to
that's
that
true.
and they don't give it to you, why? Why would you do that to
Because
me? No,
well,
I
because the
know, I
mystery is
know,
actually about
I
something.
know, I know. But you toy with me, her. You toy with me.
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's fair. I support you being upset about that because it is like,
Right?
Shatter Medallion leaves it very open ended about like if the artifacts, like if this really is like, is there alien life out there that they're trying to communicate with us? And
Right.
then Labyrinth of Lies, Thanos straight up gets away, and so they leave it totally open. Like, I suppose if anyone in the Nancy Drew games has a reason to come back, it would be Thanos because he's verified like on the move somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a choice on their part. We can whether we like it or dislike it. They just, I don't know, which is it's an interesting one to me. I was like, I don't know how I feel about a mystery, the mystery genre. I'm okay with things being open ended. I don't think I don't know if that's the best choice for mysteries though. Cuz kind
Yeah.
of like the whole nature of a mystery and kind of the agreement between game and player, like that's why I feel like you're justified for being grumpy about Silent Spy. Like you teased me with this thing and then you didn't deliver.
Yeah. Well, and especially because like that was the whole basis of the thing was like,
That's why she
I.
left.
That's
Yes.
why she left. And then you want to tease with this whole Tomb of the Lost Queen. This is what happened to your mom. Was the whole like, okay, well then what happened to her mom? I need to know. I want to know the specifics. But yeah. But
Fair.
moving on, now we get into the
We don't have
last.
much to say on this,
No,
but
no,
you got
no. But it's the last bit, which is the modern era. And a lot of what we've really talked about and like categorized kind of goes out the window with this one, because the games are so different at this point. So Her Interactive is moving towards like bigger, more expansive games with longer gameplays. So of course the story aspect of it is just going to be lengthier and more. Yeah, it's going to be like just more big. And so really, I think, and you have made an excellent point, is that with these other games like, Midnight in Salem, it requires like more replays to get a full grasp of really what's going on. And some of that, yes, can be accredited to like writing and game details, but also too just because it's a larger game with more like,
sheer volume.
yeah, you're just having to
Way more to take in.
way more to take in. But I think what's interesting to note is the patterns here are completely different. We had pattern one, pattern two about like the whole initial mystery, and you keep with that initial mystery, and then the other ones like the past and the present intertwine. Well, with Midnight in Salem, the whole initial mystery is Nancy is going to retrieve the Book of Apologies, and then it gets stolen. So the game just like spins off on to this whole complete like who set the Hawthorne house on fire, and what's May hiding, and then like who's Francis Tuttle's will, like who's got legal claim to the house, and it just keeps on going to like all of this like like
Mm-hmm.
very
And I don't really know which one of those is the most important. Like they're all important.
exactly right. They're
So
all
it doesn't
important.
fit. It doesn't fit the pattern anymore. They
No, not at
just
all. And
hit
then
us with the fire hose
with
of
Mystery of Seven
mysteries.
Keys, what about that one?
Yeah, same deal, I feel like. So again, initial it does have an initial mystery. We show up to help Adela recover the stolen gems to her necklace, but then the game pulls in like now there's this mystery like who originally owned the necklace, and then who's trying to steal the crown jewels, and then it turns out actually two people are trying to steal the crown jewels for two totally different reasons. They're working together, but their motives are totally different. And then also there is a treasure quest story because Nancy's got to find all these key schematics so she can get to the jewels. So
Wild.
again, they're just setting up many different. Well, and even also I didn't mention this one. I just remember like even the whole like the knight. Like who's the knight? Who's this knight who's chasing me? And is it a ghost?
Yeah.
So yeah, they just kind of hit you with after that one reason for being in Prague. It's like you get I don't even know how many that was I just named, like 4, 5 different mysteries
Yeah.
that you also are trying to figure out.
Yeah. And
Just a lot.
It's a lot. And it's a lot. And there's even details that we don't even get to like uncover as much that it yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it storyline wise can be a bit chaotic, but even when it comes to laying those pieces, right? And trying to piece together as far as the mystery goes.
You know, it's hit and miss. In terms of again, I think again just the sheer volume. I just feel so inundated with information
Yeah.
in the two modern era games. Like it's just a lot to keep track of. And like Midnight in Salem has also the fact too again these games have multiple different culprits.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think you could reasonably say that like Midnight in Salem has, I would argue, has 3 culprits, and Mystery of the Seven Keys, I would argue, in a sense, has 4 culprits. Like there's 2 big ones, and then 2 like yeah, it's just a. It's. I almost feel like we're just commenting on these things. There's just not really a whole lot to say because we just don't know what they're doing with it. So it's kind of like some of it worked really well for me. I will. I guess I'll just mention the one that I feel has been handled the best so far is, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but I am going to spoil. Like, stop listening now if you don't want one of the Mystery of the Seven Keys culprits spoiled. I do think that they actually have done a really nice job building up to Elka.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's the
That
one I
was
feel
so
that was
fun.
best handled. When I replay that game, I was just like, oh my goodness, there's clues everywhere. Like she makes a comment. She says, I'm not as friendly as I appear. The whole like interest in like seeming like she has a crush on Radek and she asks Nancy to keep an eye on him. I was like, oh no, it's not because she wants Nancy to like, keep an eye on her boyfriend material and let her know what he's up to. It's like, no, she wants Nancy to keep an eye on him so she knows if Radek's doing his job or not in following Nancy. And the parallels between the parallels between Nancy and Elka, because Nancy's like, okay, I lost my mom and I chose good, and Elka's the whole like, I lost my mom and I chose revenge. Yeah, so I did appreciate that one. So that's all I feel like we can say on the matter. I think we just need more games before we can assess like how this era
And that's
is
usually how it
doing.
goes when we start talking about
Mm-hmm.
the era. When we break things down by era, we get to this one and there's just not enough.
One other thing that I feel like we can actually note about the modern era so far is that again that the modern era is pulling in stuff from all the previous eras and
Oh,
kind of
yes.
blending them together. So we do have some standard mysteries like Midnight in Salem has theft. It has hauntings. It has a little bit of a treasure quest when you're trying to get the will. A Mystery of the Seven Keys has a jewel heist and a ghostly knight. So Scooby-Doo. Speaking of Scooby-Doo, you mentioned Scooby-Doo earlier. Like, honestly, the most Scooby-Doo thing we've had in a very long time is Nancy trying to capture the knight in
That
Mystery of the
was really
Seven
fun
Keys.
too.
I actually really appreciate that. I was like, oh my word, I am setting a trap. It's Scooby-Doo. Like, I was genuinely excited about that. And then experimental era, like, loves a good plot twist. So does the modern era. I think they went for a very specific plot twist in Midnight in Salem in terms of who actually set the Hathorn house on fire. That one definitely shocked me because I felt like they went for the most shocking choice
Oh
for
yeah.
that. And then also, like, there's some suspension of disbelief. Like, man, oh man, you telling me that little Miss Nancy Drew, she's gonna reforge the 7 keys of Prague and she's gonna get to those crown jewels? Like, I mean, I'm here for it, but also that's a big undertaking. That's a you're asking me to swallow a whole lot of suspension of
Only
disbelief.
a job for Nancy Drew.
Yeah, but she's Nancy Drew, so she can do it. And then, of course, the biggest one is that the modern era definitely continues the personal era's themes, like those very serious, kind of dark, more mature, like people having real, genuine struggles.
Sure.
Because Midnight in Salem taps into kind of how May feels, kind of as a like an outcast in Salem, and there's some broken friendships that need repairing, and then there's a lot about Deirdre and like how she relates to her cousins. And then, of course, Mystery of the 7 Keys definitely delves into some issues Elka might be having because of what happened to her mom. And then again, just like you had brought this up earlier, like Mystery of the 7 Keys, like it just feels a little bit, it feels more intense and dangerous, I feel like, than Secret of the Scarlet Hand, Phantom of Venice, and even Labyrinth of Lies. Like Mystery of the 7 Keys just felt the most dangerous of all of those games that have some sort of like art heist going on.
Oh yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that that's as something else we're seeing in the modern era.
Yeah, and that's a great
And
point to
that's
bring
it.
up. That's I
And this
know.
has been a lovely conversation.
No, really, that's exactly what I was going to say, Tori. Is that I have quite enjoyed our conversation today because I feel like today, we definitely have discussed and talked about things that I feel like I've never really not only heard but also ever even thought of. Like these are just some good like brain bending conversations where I'm just like deeply assessing and thinking about these games and how game details can change the way that you view culprits and how these story elements really shape the way you see a game. I mean, like, this was a really, really fun conversation to have with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And then next week, I mean, we already gave it away, but our season 1 finale is next week, and I am just like I can't believe we have almost made it here to the end.
I know.
And I'm sorry if you all are feeling like ready to go into mourning. Like, what? Finale already? But Carter and I, we're both human, and we need some time to catch our breaths and just take a break for our own,
Sanity.
mental health, and then also just to plan out season 2.
Yeah.
And because it takes a lot of work to put these episodes together, it's a lot of fun,
true.
but we just need some time to get season 2 ready. So
Absolutely.
there will be a season 2, but we are sending you off, I feel like, with the best possible. Like, I'm so excited about the finale episode. Like, this is, I don't know, I don't want to like pump us up too much, but I feel like pretty confident to say that we are about to drop the most comprehensive deep dive that has ever been done on the amazing, incredible Sunny June.
Oh yeah.
We're giving you a
Sunny
whole
June.
episode just about Sunny June. Where does he show up? What's going on? And I have learned some things about Sunny June prepping for this episode. So hopefully you all will learn some things about Mr. Sunny that you did not know before. And I think it's going to be, because it's Sunny June, it's going to be a wacky, hilarious, fun conversation.
No better way to end the season one. No better way.
Mm-hmm.
So bring your UFOs and your Cocoa Kringles and come hang out with us at the season finale next week.
Woo! Bye,
Thanks so much
everyone.
for joining. Bye, you guys.